The First Million Words, episode something 9, Exposing Exposition, with Michael J. Sullivan. So I was like, oh, this is gonna come up later. Oh.
Yeah, we had a lot of that. And the trick at the time was to try and present, because what I wanted to do with, when there were 6 books, separate books, there's a lot of information that picks up. It's like one of those songs where you sing a verse and then someone else sings a verse and another verse, and you keep going around until like someone can't keep up, right? You have to keep remembering them all. So what I wanted to do when I wrote this was that each successive book, I had to cover somewhat of what happened in the previous book, not so much for people who are, because they were supposed to be standalones for the most part. Mm-hmm. They kind of lose that near the later, like the 5th and the 6th books. You really kind of need the other books. Yeah. So I had to kind of give you some background information for people who were picking only that book up. Mm-hmm. But also, it was for people who hadn't read the previous book for 6 months or a year earlier. They needed to have a refresher. So the trick was to give you that refresher without repeating what you already knew verbatim. Yeah. Or giving you this big, exposition piece where a person picking the book up for the first time would be bored out of their skull. So I had to keep presenting that information, trying to blend it in and giving you a little bit more than what you knew before, so you weren't totally bored by it. And so far, I think most people thought I did okay with that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I wanted to cover like a whole segment on the exposition that we can as one of the writing topics. Now again, I feel compelled just to remind you if you need to take a break or anything.
One thing, I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Can I take a break and I want to?
You may.
Oh, okay. I'm not, but go ahead.
Okay.
Just wanted to clear that because that was confusing me.
Okay, good. Now, finally, I wanted to talk about exposition a bit more in depth. Like revealing that information to the reader. Mm-hmm. And trying to keep it, trying to not be annoying and not be boring about it. I know in your books, a lot of that comes from the narrative, and a lot of it comes from Myron, the monk.
Yeah.
And
exposition is a dirty 4-syllable word.
Yeah.
we tend to not use that if we can.
Yeah, I liked how in your series with Myron doing some of the exposition. There's that whole cliche about, well, as you know, Jim, you know, and then start with dialogue so that the reader knows what's going on. But at least with, I kind of identified with how Myron did his exposition because, he's a book nerd.
Right.
And there's these people that they're asking the difference between this, part of, like, sect of religion and this sect of religion. And so Myron has to go back and explain, well, it all started this way and then diverged into the two kind of belief systems. And I identified with that because I grew up church, and I still am very much a like a Bible nerd. I always feel like I have to explain, like, well, no, I'm not Catholic, kind of do that. So I think being able to identify like that really made the exposition easier to take in, because it's like I could see myself saying that.
Right. Well, exposition, there's 2 types of it. Mm-hmm. You've touched on one. One is, of course, the obvious, which is where you just narrate.
Yeah.
And the other is kind of cheating exposition, where you do it through contrived dialogue. Mm-hmm. And neither one are good. However, oddly enough, it was considered the norm for generations.
Oh yeah.
If you look at anything by Dickens, he has tons of exposition. Most of the books are exposition. Very little of it is actually scene based. So, but in more modern books, we have learned that exposition is something that bores the heck out of people. So we tend to eliminate that as much as we can. And in the process of eliminating it, we've kind of pushed it into the contrived dialogue, which, like you said, as you well know. Yeah. So why are you bringing it up? Yeah. I've done that. And years ago, I wrote that very line. It's like, well, why the heck did he talk to? Why did one person tell another person exactly what the other person knew better than they did? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, like an actor like winking at the camera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you'd have to try and get around that. Unfortunately, with any book, particularly in fantasy, when you have to explain everything, you need to get across a set of information in a very short period of time. And sometimes between one event and another, you don't have a lot of time to figure out a natural way for that information to bubble to the surface. So you have to try and create the best situation you can by which to get that information to come out. And in some instances, you can have the character think it. If the character doesn't know that information, then he has to talk to someone. And in the case with Myron, that was what happened. Now, the reality is that I didn't actually invent Myron for the purpose of an info dump, which is the other more colloquial term of an exposition. And a number of people have said, as one of the criticisms of my books, like, well, he has this info dump character whose only purpose is to, explain things, which is not at all true, because of the fact that you can remove Myron from the story and the story works. He's not there because many people thought he was required to be there so that they could find the prison. And he doesn't have to be there. He doesn't tell them what the prison is. He doesn't know. They already have that information before they leave. But because I had him there, I wasn't giving exposition as a reasoning, or I wasn't using Myron to be able to explain information to the reader. Rather, I was doing the opposite. I was using Myron's exposition as a means of describing his character. Because if you have a person who knows everything and has an eidetic memory and has read tons and tons of books, how else can you show that except by having him tell you stuff? So it was really a matter of showing rather than telling by telling rather than showing. So it's a really twisted situation when you think about it. And when people read it, they assume it's exposition, when in fact it's characterization. So that instance is weird. That's not to say that I'm immune to exposition, because there was times when I absolutely had to do it. And I had no choice. There's a famous one where Myron tells the history of the gods. And it's completely useless because of the fact that it means nothing in the story. Because they're asking him a question to try and get into a door, and they get done, and he's like, well, that doesn't help us at all. And he said, well, yeah, I know. You asked.
I just thought it was an interesting story.
So if that seems really out of place. But again, it was characterization. It is Myron not knowing what information he can give, because he's not smart enough to know what information they need. He just has all kinds of information. He's like a computer. He's like, you typed in women without tops, and you get all kinds of stuff. And it's not necessarily the stuff you're looking for. So that's what Myron's like.
Or maybe it is.
So I'm sorry. So in that case, it's really Myron's characterization that I was bringing up. But there are times when, of course, like for example, when Ulrich first arrives at Drondale Fields, there is a quick exposition there telling the history of Drondale Fields, something which I wanted to get out, but unfortunately I didn't have any easy means to do it other than to have Ulrich being very proud of his kingdom, and this is his favorite friend's house, and it's a huge part of his history. So he's going to turn to them and tell them, because he's proud of it, and he's kind of showing off. So he's telling them how great he is by doing it. So that gives him a reasoning that seems sort of logical. And if you can give the reader a justification for it, even if it's weak, and in that case, I'll grant you it was a fairly weak justification, at least it seems plausible. And when you're writing, you can get away with plausible. You just can't get away with impossible.
Yeah.
Like I have, my wife has always hated not hated the movie necessarily, but she really despises the part of the movie Independence Day, where Jeff Goldblum uses a Mac computer to be able to upload a virus to an alien spaceship, and she says to herself, "That's not possible." And I thought, well, he's using the satellite which they tapped into, so they're obviously using the same software. So he's tapping into that software, so it is plausible. It may not be likely, but you can say benefit of the doubt in an extreme situation, it's possible. And as long as it is possible, it's going to be okay with most readers. If you get really picky readers, they're going to say, well, that seemed a real stretch. Yes, but was it impossible? No. All right, then back off. It's like, because I have read stuff where you broke the rule. I have the same problem with the third Matrix movie. I'm like, wait a minute. You broke rules. You made the rules, you break them, I have issues. So as long as it's possible, I think readers will let you get away with it. And the more plausible you can make it, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, and also I feel, well, when you're doing it in the narrative style, kind of building something up, and the author speaking, Not like a character telling another one. That's kind of necessary to know what's going to happen later on. Like, what's the place? Drummondor?
Yes.
That was the place with the lava that would come out.
Right.
Yeah, that, like, you had to have that little backstory of, the dwarfs built it, and, it's a great defense for the port.
Right.
And, you need that bit of exposition for later.
And that bit of exposition was covered very well because of the fact that the reason why you're given that exposition is part of the plot. Because they're looking for something. They've been told it's the horn. And they know, they ask the person about the horn. He says, well, that's the horn. Yeah. And so then they said, oh, well, what about that? So you have a reason for them to ask that question. So it seems very plausible, and it's integrated into the story. The problem is when it's not integrated in the story, and it just seems to come out of left field. Yeah. But something you just mentioned was that when you say it's when the author is talking, I try never to have the author talk. Some writers do this. Some writers will have the author speaking, but I don't do that. And most people who's writing that I read generally don't have the author ever speak, because what you're actually seeing when you're writing narrative is you're hearing a distant thought of the character whose head you're in. And that's the basis of point of view. So that I didn't realize this at first. This is why I'm bringing it up, because I didn't know when I first got done writing my books. I gave it to my first agent, and she came back and said, you have a slight problem with your point of view. It shifts from one person to another in the same scene. And I'm like, what's point of view? Because I didn't have a clue. And but at the exact same time, I was reading a book called Artemis Fowl, a kid's book. And it was annoying the heck out of me. And I couldn't figure out exactly why. And as soon as she said that, I went, oh, that's why. Because he kept jumping from head to head in the same conversation. So I didn't know whose point of view I was hearing it from. Even though it is generally narration that is not anyone talking, it's not direct thought. But how things are described are always described in the head of a certain person, such that when you said it's a beautiful valley, you could also describe that it was a cold, dark valley, or it was a barren valley, or it was amazingly empty, or it was filled with rich green grass. I mean, there's many different ways of describing the exact same thing, and how you describe it describes the attitude of the person viewing it. So when you describe something, you're not just describing the thing, you're also describing the... this is a good example. That was one of the exercises I was telling you about in the writing post, was that if you're describing a house, let's say Bob comes over to George's house, and he describes his house, and he says it was a piece of crap little ranch-style place with a crappy old foreign car in the garage. You immediately know from that who George is, but more importantly, you know who the Frank is, the main person thinking it, because you know that he doesn't like foreign cars, so he's more patriotic. You know that he thinks that ranches suck, and you know he doesn't like George. And you've gotten all that by describing the house, not either of the characters. So whenever you can do two or three things with the same words, you're helping the reader to gain more information over less time, and that's always better. And that helps out exposition, because when you're trying to describe something or give information out, and you can give out twice the information using half the words, you're doing really well as a writer, I would say. Uh-oh, you got very quiet now.
Oh, sorry. No, that was...
You left you speechless.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think in my head about how I feel about that. But I like that.
Let me tell you, you'll love it.
Yeah. Thank you, author. Yeah, I like that, being able to do that exposition just through like how the character like interprets what's going on in their head, or how they view something like that. And that's a good way, like you were saying earlier, with kind of weaving it into the story and kind of burying it, within, the italics for if they're thinking, the quotation marks if they're speaking, and just straight up like, how you're typing it, like, and that's how they see the world.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are different ways of doing it, and certainly there are different distances when you're doing third person. Yeah. I tend to write in more closer third person because it allows me to do multiple things at once like that. But obviously there are other writers who write at a great distance and will jump from head to head and will totally slip their point of view because they're narrating a story more like a storyteller would as opposed to scene by scene. I prefer the closer point of view because it tends to make the story much more personal and visceral and emotionally impacting, and you can get more out of it.
Yeah, that seems to be like the new kind of direction that is going. Because like if you read older books, it's all like third person, omniscient.
Yeah, it's very distant third person. Like I said, like with Dickens, you have all this overall godlike voice talking to you through the whole thing, and he knows everything that's going to happen and how everyone feels, and he lets you know as if. He just gives you this, but the result of that, I think, is it tends to be very intellectual and it tends to be less impactful as far as emotional. You don't feel that you're there. You feel that someone's telling you a story. You don't feel like you're experiencing the story. And I think, particularly in the genres, that people like to have that more personal approach today, at least.
Definitely, yeah. Even with like we were talking about Harry Potter. That's that's a very tight. Third person, but it's all from one character.
Yeah, it's almost a first person from third person.
yeah. You don't get any other things until like the fourth book, and then it's all Harry except for like just a handful of chapters that are other people. But I think taking that point of view into mind is a good way to express exposition because you're not just describing something, you're describing how this person reacts to it and how they feel about it and why it's necessary to them.
One of the things that occurs when you do that, unfortunately, is that and if you write in first person, you don't have this problem because you're locked. But when you write in third person, there's this tendency to want to just kind of add in information that the character couldn't possibly know. So what ends up happening is that you'll drift out of the proper point of view unless you're careful. Because there are certain times when you really want to give information that the character whose head you're in doesn't have. And this causes people to cheat. And they'll say things like, he seemed to be upset with what I said. Rather than going through the effort of describing that person's reaction in such a way that the reader can figure that out for themselves, they will cheat and kind of try and give you this hint of what the narrator wants you to know. And the thing is that I've found when you have those problems, when you go to the effort of doing it correctly, and when I say correctly, I mean staying locked in your point of view, not telling what's happening, but showing, you'll have to go through a lot of different hoops to make the same thing happen. That would be so much easier than just telling the reader. So if you do it over a longer period of time, you go through much more effort. It's a lot more work, but when you get done, the result is always better.
Nice. Well, I think that's pretty good on exposition. We covered all my little notes here, the weaving it in, ignorant characters and like flashbacks. Guillermo, did you have any final questions?
No. I'm taking notes here. Although I'm going to be listening to the podcast, so I'm.
Oh, good. So we'll have 4 people that listen now.
So one person will hear.
Yeah. All right. Any final words on the process of putting exposition in there?
No, not only that you should probably avoid it as much as you can, or if you can, try to disperse it throughout the plot and the characterization such that you can disguise and not let people even realize they're understanding or learning about the information you need them to know. If you slip it in to the story without them being able to see it, that's going to be so much better. And, of course, most importantly is never put it up front. Always get the person hooked on the story and the characters before you start having to feed them information. If you can get them to a point in the story where they're hungry for that information, they'll be far more forgiving even if you give them a complete double-page info dump. Because if it's something they want to know, if they're a character, they've been dying to find out their history. It's like, oh God, this character is so interesting. Whatever happened to him? Why did he get this way? And then you have a character walk in and say, let me tell you this story about how he started out. And you'd be like, oh, okay. I want to know this information, even though if you started the book that way, they'd be like, oh my God, why are we having this huge info dump right at the, So that's kind of the difference. If you have them craving it, they'll be far more forgiving. If you give it to them up front before they care about it, they're going to be hating you for it.
Nice. All right, great advice. Let's go ahead and end it on that.
I go outside, and I come back, and I close my Outlook, and it turns out that they had scheduled me for a meeting 15 minutes before it started.
Oh, that's no good.
Yeah, and I'm like, damn it.
So nobody came by and said, "Hey, the meeting's starting. Let's go have that meeting."
No, they let me know 15 minutes before it started.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
They do that all the time, and it pisses me off.
Oh. Did you happen to get any writing done, or did you at least think about anything?
No, I was too busy to do any writing.
Oh, really? That sucks. So
yeah.
So we just had our episode with Michael J. Sullivan, where we were talking about exposition, and I think the big thing we take away from that is to try to avoid info dumps. Because info dumps are basically just, the writer like, oh, I put all this time into the world and building it, and now you're going to have to sit and read how, the history of the world came about and how, stuff works in the world and how the political systems work. And here you go, And
exactly.
Then, and we're just going to take a little break from the story and the plot,
Yeah, and like Jebediah begat Zedediah, and Zedediah begat. Yeah, I'm like, really? How many pages is this?
Yeah,
there's like 48 pages of begats. I'm like, okay, let's just let's move to the next chapter.
Yeah,
I'm sure Jesus will be okay with that.
Yes, yeah. If you're reading Numbers in the Bible, I think it's Numbers, right? Wait,
I can't remember now.
I think it's Numbers where it's like this guy beget this guy and that guy beget that guy and lots of begetting.
Yeah.
And one of the great things I took away from our interview with Michael was when the main characters, they ask Myron, who's I guess he's a main character. He doesn't show up in all the books, but he's at least a very strong secondary character. And they ask him a question about, well, how are we supposed to open this dungeon and get in here if there's no door? And, if it's magic, what do we do? And then, Myron goes on, like, kind of a rant about how, oh, well, there's the god of, everything, and he had, like, 3 sons and a daughter, and this happened and that happened, and then, there was betrayal and rape, which always happens when there's gods involved. And then at the end of that, they're like, you didn't answer a question. But he's like, oh, well, sorry, that's I don't know how to answer your question then. And it's a lot more, character based than it is, world based or setting based. So I thought that was a really fun trick to make it sound like, you're building the world, or well, to make it so that you are building the world, but it just sounds like, it's just kind of a little funny side thing that the character does.
Yeah. Well, y'all have that one friend that you ask a simple question and yeah, they'll tell you the history. I'm like, oh man, I wonder how clouds work. And then they'll tell you everything. I'm like, dude, it was rhetorical.
Yeah. So that's cool. I like that. 'Cause info dumps, when you're talking about, excuse me, when you're talking about sci-fi fantasy, that is something that is a big problem in that genre, is that you'll get these pages and pages of, well, this is how magic works. If you say this specific incantation, it does this, but if you say it wrong, it'll do that, and blah, blah, blah. And it really kind of drags on, and you're like, okay, this is just, the author just stroking his own ego. Like, look at this cool magic system I developed, and this is how it works.
Yes.
Yeah.
We every now and then we'll have to remind them, please don't stroke your ego in front of the children. It scares them. I don't know, man.
Exactly. So, aside from your very unproductive day where you missed a meeting, this whole week in general, how has your writing been going? Have you been doing anything lately?
I've kind of gotten to a point of the story where I'm like, okay, I need to develop this character more, but I'm like, the thing is, I don't really have a good grasp of the character itself. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm like because the way she started out really, really kind of generic.
Well,
And I'm like,
this is the elf stripper.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this character. So
Yeah.
I just kind of started writing a few things here and there, and the thing is, I don't want her to have any interest in the main character. So kind of like it's got an unrequited love thing to it, but she's not what she's looking for. So I'm like, okay, that may be part of it. That could be one part of the frustration that he has, and I'm like, but I don't know how to make her like how to, I guess, make her put him in the friend zone pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I want her to friend zone him, but I don't want it to seem like she's kind of like she's being mean about it. But-
She's nice, but it's just one of those heart crushing things that she doesn't even realize that she did.
Yeah,
Yeah, girls, right?
Yeah, it happens. It's okay.
Yeah. Oh, last week we were talking about how you were writing these characters that were the redneck trolls.
I love
And-
the redneck trolls.
Yeah.
I absolutely love them.
Yeah, I know you finished that and sent it to me, and it was really fun. I really liked listening to it, and they actually there's a little bit of alligator wrestling in there, and a lot of hilarity ensues.
I really liked that chapter. I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, it was fun.
I'm like, it's comedy, yet it's also action. I'm like, this is the only thing in my book that I'm actually reading and thinking, wow, I've outdone myself. But then someone's probably gonna come by and like shoot it down, and I'm okay with that. But I wrote it for me. If no one else likes it, then nuts to them.
Yes.
Literally, testicles.
Yes.
To them.
So a pretty good, a pretty unproductive writing week, I guess, for you.
Yeah, it's been just so busy at work. Normally, like the last 2 hours of the day is like when I write,
Yeah.
and it's just been so busy because they decide to sometimes not give me any sort of support. It's like, okay, well, you're on level 1, and there's people that are on level 2 that will take all the calls that you don't take. But the calls go through you first. So I take all the calls while the 3 other people are sitting on the phone playing solitaire, and I'm like back to back all night. I'm like, could someone fix this, please?
Oh, that sucks. I have that the opposite thing where I have like too much time working overnight as in security at a retirement home. I basically just I sit around and I am that person that sits there and plays solitaire all night. Except for me, it's become Minecraft.
I'm sorry.
Which the other day I accidentally called it Minecomp.
Oh,
And I was like, no, that's not what I was playing. No, it's Minecraft.
it's not like some Hitler RPG.
No.
Okay.
That probably wouldn't. That probably wouldn't really be a very popular game, I think, except with a very select few amount of people.
Yes, and it would probably have a pretty hardcore following of people that we don't want to associate with at all.
Yeah. But I did manage to write this week, actually over just the span of a couple days. And then the whole rest of the time, I was like outlining other novels and stuff and writing stuff in my idea folder. I did manage to almost finish a short story. And I'm actually going to send the unfinished short story to you and take a note from the interviews we did with Brian Thomas Schmidt last month, where he says he doesn't write the end until the end. He'll send it out to his beta readers and then wait like a couple of months and then write the ending, kind of based on the info they send him back and how he's feeling at the moment. Which, by the way, we're going to have him back on the show at the beginning of July. Just for a quick check-in, because he's going on a book tour for his new book, The Returning, that's coming out soon.
That sounds epic.
Yeah, so it's going to be fun, and I can't wait to read that. But yeah, so anyway, I wrote my short story, which came out longer than I wanted to, as always. I think I got up to 5,200 words. Hang on, I can look it up now. But probably about 5,200 words. I'm looking at it right now. Hold on. The number. Oh, actually, only 4,800 words, but that's without an ending, so it probably is going to be more like 5,200 words. and I was really shooting for no more than 4,000 words.
I don't know. I can't write short stories. I need a lot of space, and
Yeah.
I talk too much to. It's like I'm like, what, most of this is dialogue.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it takes a lot of space.
That's okay. There's some, short story venues out there. Like if you're submitting to the Writers of the Future contest, which if you win that, or even get an honorable mention or first, second or third place, that's quite the accomplishment. And that one just requires that your story be under 17,000 words, and that's practically a novelette.
Yeah, but I don't know. The thing is, I'm completely like, I don't know. It's like I have to write stuff that's funny because otherwise it's boring to me.
Yeah,
and then people just don't like that. I'm like, they're like, no, this is serious sci-fi.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's another thing is this is my first attempt. Well, sort of my first attempt at writing sci-fi, because it's I think I mentioned it before. It's basically I read. Well, I think we talked about this last week. I read the Space Battles short story collection, and then I immediately thought of samurais in space, and then added Old West to it. So it's the first attempt I had. So I had to look up a few things, like the word periapsis, which is when a planet is in its closest rotation, or its closest point to the sun.
Okay.
So I had to look that up, and then, I was like, do I use meters or feet? And I think when you're writing sci-fi, you have to use metric system.
I don't know. I choose to ignore the metric system.
Yeah.
Because it's I'm like, just tell me how many feet it is and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's like if I lived in any other country, then I'd probably meters, fine. How many farthings is it, or rods
Leagues.
or leagues? Like, I don't know. Just tell me feet. Tell me feet wise and miles wise, and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Just leave me alone.
Yeah.
I want to like what I like.
Yeah. So that's, and also, as a side note, I got to write a story where my main character's name is Ren, because it's all like Japanese names because they're samurai. And I was like, I like the name Ren. It's that's actually the name of the main character from Ninja Gaiden. I pronounced it right. Did you see what I did there?
I always called it Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah, me too. But I was like, Ninja Gaiden sounds better. And also, Ren is the name of my favorite cartoon dog.
Everyone's favorite cartoon dog, unless you're a Scooby-Doo fan, in which case, have fun being 8. I'll enjoy my fart jokes. Thank you.
Yes. And also, I just looked it up, and I guess Ren is also the Confucian virtue, denoting the good feeling a virtuous human experiences when being altruistic. That actually kind of comes into play, or it might at the end of the story, depending on how you and my other, beta readers dig the story. Because I kind of left it open where it could go one of, maybe 2 big directions, and I'll just see what you guys think of it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested in seeing that. I want to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I'll send
well,
it to you.
I think I've already sent you like what I wrote with like my attempt at a short story that turned out to be. I'm like, you know what? This is going to be probably like 20,000 words. It's not anywhere near a short story.
Yeah.
And it's not even. I'm like, it's about a weird mutant, weird shark. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm doing this now. At this point, I'm writing it just because I want to write it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I just want to look over it, and it's a weird, deformed sort of like monkey creature, but it's my weird, deformed monkey creature, and only I can appreciate it. And I'm okay with that.
Oh, so here I just looked it up. All right, a novelette or a novella is between 17.5 and 40K words. So you're still good. You're good to go.
All right.
And then a novelette, let's see. Oh, really? A novelette is like between 7,500 and about 17,000 words. Oh, okay.
Oh.
I guess I have written a novelette then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm kind of. Well, I guess I'm aiming for 100,000 words, but at this point, it's looking more likely like it's going to be maybe 150. I don't know. I've got to do a lot of editing.
Yeah,
Lots of it.
that usually. The editing process, that can go either way. You cut out all this stuff you don't need, and then you realize that there's more stuff that you do need, so you never end up cutting out as much as you thought you would.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, okay, I have this 6,000 word short story, and I'm going to edit it down to 4,000 words. And then when you're done editing it down, it's actually more like, 5,500 words. So you only got like 500 words out of there. So such is life.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm like, I don't really fit in anywhere. It's like the sci-fi buffs are going to be like, this is stupid. And the comedy buffs are going to be like, this is too sci-fi-ish. And I'm like, okay, fine. Just
you got to find that
alone.
happy medium.
Yeah, I got to find it. I'm pretty sure there's a market for it out there. I mean, I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just like, just read it and laugh at it. And then shower me with praise and I'll be fine.
Yes. That's all you're asking for.
I just ask for undying, allegiance to my weird writing cause.
Yeah, you just want a bunch of sycophants. What?
Exactly. I just want you to commit seppuku in my, in my honor. Is that too much to ask?
Oh boy. So, bringing it back to a more serious note, this episode is the end of our interview series with Michael J. Sullivan. Next week, we'll do a wrap up of May, and starting in June, we have our interviews with Rachel Aaron, and that'll be a lot of fun.
We did. She is very awesome and nice and funny, and we love her stuff. We love her books.
Yeah, we actually haven't. I don't think we've interviewed a single author yet that we haven't totally loved.
Everyone's so nice. Like we haven't gotten like that one weird like author that's like, you don't get my work.
or the one author that's like, you ask a really deep question, they're like, yeah, not really, no.
Yeah.
And then that's it. It's like, oh, I was hoping for like a 10-minute soundbite out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, so do you what you wrote about, the mountain, and it's like, I get it. It's like the mountain was totally not there. It was about, man overcoming. Yeah. And
Yeah.
He's like, dude, it was just a mountain. You just had to climb a mountain. That's it. I don't know where you're getting this.
And you're obviously stupid. You're bad, and you should feel bad.
Yeah, this interview stops now.
Yeah. Click. Dial tone.
Stop the cameras. Stop the cameras.
Yeah.
There are no cameras.
Yeah, there wouldn't really be a dial tone either.
Yeah. It would just be like, well, that was our interview with Stephen King. No.
Although there's that one thing. All the interviews we've done so far, we have kind of... it might be us coaxing it out of the people we're interviewing. But there have been quite a few times where Stephen King got a little bit bashed.
Oh, we love Stephen King.
Yeah, and I do have to admit something, and this may kill our listenership and everything. I have actually never read a Stephen King book.
You've never read a Stephen King book?
Nope.
Oh my god!
I know.
Dude, really?
I know. Yeah.
It's like then you don't know the awesomeness that is like it's like his like when he explains it, things like a really gory scene. Like I don't know how he does it. I view it in my head, and it's more disturbing than it actually is in the movie that I'm watching.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but it just is.
What would you recommend for a first book? If I said I wanted to read Stephen King, what would be the first book you would tell me to read?
A really interesting one that I have this weird love of it is a book called Desperation.
Desperation. Okay.
I don't know why I liked it so much, but I did. I don't know. That's the one I kind of gravitate towards for some reason.
Okay. Well, I'll look that one up then. I'll give that a try. I'll try this whole Stephen King thing out.
Yeah, it's really spooky.
Yeah.
I like it.
But that might be the same kind of thing where it took me a long while to sit and watch Dexter and also Doctor Who, because just everybody I knew was like, oh, you got to watch Dexter or you got to watch Doctor Who. They're great. And I was like, okay, yeah, I will. Sure. And then I never did because I was like, oh, everybody's telling me to. I don't want to do it. So that may be why I've never read Stephen King either.
Oh, okay. I think he's good. Like, I really just, I don't know. There's something about the way he describes things that I could just see it so clearly in my head. And like when it seems like when it's translated into like movies, it's like it's never as horrible as it is in my head.
Oh.
maybe I'm some sort of psychopath, but I a lot of times I'm like, you know what? I would have rather not seen the movie and just stuck with what I saw in my head.
Now, what did you think then? Did you ever read The Shining?
I actually have not read The Shining.
Oh, okay. Because I was just going to ask like, which version you liked better, the the Jack Nicholson version or the guy from Wings version.
There's a guy from Wings version?
Yeah, it was a miniseries that they did for TV. It had the brother who was always like, the comic relief brother who was always like dating different girls and stuff, and he was the main character. And apparently nobody really liked it. I liked it. I thought it was fun, but this is coming from somebody who's never read the book. I liked that version, but I liked the Jack Nicholson version too, But I guess Stephen King liked the guy from Wings version better. That's what I'm going to call it from now on, is the guy from Wings version.
It's like we're not even going to bother like Wikipedia or IMDb searches. It's just a guy.
Who does that?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's saying the guy from Wings version, it works. If I had said the whatever the guy's name is.
Yeah, and like when you say Carlton, you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
I don't even know the guy's name, but he's Carlton. Okay.
We were just that reminds me of the conversation we were just having about missing the 90s.
Yeah.
And like there's that little part of me that still thinks the 90s was like, less than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's almost 20 years ago now, dude.
Yeah.
That it was well, it is 20 years ago that it was 1992.
Yeah. That's sad. But that's okay. I mean, stuff gets, better and it gets worse.
Yeah.
That's the way of stuff, I guess.
Yeah, but that whole discussion about the 90s, it totally now all I have is, a Soul Asylum stuck in my head now.
Oh, okay. I've got Megadeth stuck in my head for some reason now.
We may have had a different 90s experience.
Oh, no, I was kind of like when I discovered the alternative station, I was like, there has to be more. And I was like, no, there needs to be music that's harder than this. Yes, thrash. Yes, thrash is awesome. I need to find something that's harder. Death metal. Yes, just. and then I was like, I need to be more metal.
And then you got really pale and started wearing black mascara and moved to Norway.
Yeah, and I started burning churches down and stuff. Apparently,
dude, they're hardcore over there.
I'm like, dude, you do realize underneath it all, you're just a dude in face paint and leather pants, and like you're not impressing anyone with the burning churches thing.
Yeah.
Like you're more of a nuisance at this point.
See, yeah, when you think of metal kids over here, it's like the nerdy, kids that are like playing D&D in their mother's basements, and listening to metal at night or whatever. And over in Norway, it's a completely different story. People die over there.
Exactly.
It's like gangster rap over here.
The 90s gangster rap.
Yeah, 90s. Oh.
Yeah, because it was different back then. Now it seems I don't know.
That's another song that I immediately got stuck in my head about 90s. And this isn't gangster rap, but you said rap, and that reminded me of I Wish I Was a Little Bit Taller. That song? Yeah, that is totally not gangster. That's my jam.
Okay.
Because I was a short kid growing up. I didn't get up to 6'2" like I am now until I was like 17. So.
Oh, well, I was the weird psycho kid. So yeah, it was all about natural born killers. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is like metal, only like the rap version. I'm like, this is awesome. and then it's like, yeah, let's mix rap and metal. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Not good.
No, thank you, Limp Bizkit. So, on that note, that was a nice little diversion we got into there. Let's wrap it up. Let's call it a show.
Let's never speak of it again.
Put a bow on it. I'm gonna go and make myself a '90s rap playlist now. It's gonna have a lot of Tupac on it.
Okay.
But not Biggie, because East Coast for life. Wait, did I get that mixed up?
You did get that mixed up.
No, I didn't. No. Oh, I did. Yep. Dang it.
Yes, you did.
Now I'm gonna get shot.
Yeah. I'm sorry, man. That's just not even editing will save you.
I meant to say West Coast for life.
Yeah, we'll just
even though I'm on the East Coast.
Yeah, we'll just and what I'm planning to put on pop music from India and dance around my room with no pants on. That's the way I kind of wind down our shows from now on.
Great, that sounds like a wonderful night. So Signing off. Next week we'll have our May wrap up, where it will be even more hilarity and hijinks ensuing. So listen to that, and then the week after that is our kickoff with Rachel Aaron. Look for her books, the Legend of Eli Monpress stuff, and also don't forget Michael J. Sullivan's stuff, the Riyra Revelations, and check him out on Riyra. That's Riyria. I've gotten very good at spelling that. .com, Riyra.com. And until next week, I am Benjamin J. Love.
And I am Guillermo Velez.
Right. You didn't have a funny middle name this time.
Oh my god, I completely forgot. I was gonna say dances to pop music in his birthday suit, but that just wouldn't. I don't know. Something kept me from saying that.
Yeah, that doesn't jive very well.
No, it just doesn't flow.
No.
I mean, it flows when I'm doing it, but doesn't really flow when I say it.
Yeah. Well, on that note.